Thank you very much. Minister, infrastructure Ontario is a key part of all the big projects going on, infrastructure projects going on Ontario. And I think Ontario and Ontarians depend on your infrastructure ministry to come up with all the, not only the recreationals and centers and community activities, but more into infrastructure. So I have two questions for you. The first question is how do you ensure that projects are delivered in time, in budget? I know that talking about Mississauga, because I am the only member from Mississauga here, I can talk about Mississauga Hazel McKillian line, LRT, as well as Mississauga Hospital, the biggest hospital in Ontario. I think from the feedback I'm getting from both projects, they are on time, and almost I start seeing the rails in the street, which is very nice to see. All the crossings already in place. So I pass by that every day, and I'm just monitoring the development myself to see how things going. How can you put measures into the projects to make sure that it is delivered in time and in budget, especially that we have some example of projects gone sideways from previous experiences, not to name any, but some. And we still hear about issues about them. My second part of the question would be how can we also make sure that we have enough budget for maintaining the current infrastructure we have? Because without money to keep it up to speed, it's going to deteriorate. So we need to make sure that whatever we build, we maintain, we keep an eye on that, and make it usable as long as we can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, those are two very good questions. First, I'll start off with, we just went through a very difficult time for 3 years. Obviously, that had impacts on the construction sector, on the work that IO and MOI have to do. But I think what's really important, something that we recognize, is that we continue to build throughout COVID. Provincial priority projects continued to build. West Park Hospital and Healthcare Center construction continued during COVID, during that difficult time, as did Mac Block, as did other large infrastructure projects. So we continued. Of course, we listened to the medical professionals, chief medical officer. We made sure work sites were safe, but we continued on because we knew how important building hospitals and long-term care and schools were, and transit during that time. But we engaged in a dialogue with our builders about what was happening on the ground, challenges that they were facing, and that comes back to the three of us, to our teams. And so this is a constant exercise in our ministry of how can we make sure what can we do to keep standards high and constantly improve standards, but what can we do to make sure that we can execute on that project faster and quicker. And so very well, MPP Sabawy, we've presented several pieces of legislation in the House to help construct things or to ease some of the barriers and the burdens. 3 pieces of legislation to help with high-speed internet connection, building broadband, Building Transit Faster Act, Transit-Oriented Communities Act. And so that exercise is constantly happening. And then, of course, selecting the right model for the project is pretty important. In terms of the maintenance piece, we evaluate, Infrastructure Ontario evaluates as to whether or not include maintenance in our P3 projects, whether we find it beneficial, and then we go out to market. So those recommendations come to us and to government. And then, of course, in many cases, we work with our capital ministries. When we build a new hospital, Ministry of Health has their input and works with us. And then, of course, when we give funding to municipalities for the projects, whether it's federal and provincial dollars, then, there's a whole reporting system. Our job is to make sure that facility is built, and then the recipient of those provincial and federal dollars will usually be the one maintaining it. So it truly depends on which project you speak of, but our job is to make sure it's built and to work with our partner ministries on the maintenance piece.